go. So it's good to see everybody today, and it's one more person coming in. So, okay. So our portion this week is VaYigash, and want to say a few things about it. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. So we're just starting a new year, secular new year, but we're coming to the end of the book of Genesis now with this portion. This portion ends the first of the 5 books of the Torah. And I want to begin from even before we look at the words of the portion, because if we turn to the Chumash to page 293, or whatever Chumash you have, Genesis chapter 47, beginning with verse 28. So VaYigash, just the table of contents, last portion of the book of Genesis. So it's kind of hard to tell from the Chumash, how the portion is printed in the Chumash, about how it looks in the Torah scroll. And we would assume, by looking at the Chumash, that it looks the same in the Torah scroll. But one more person coming in. But how the, one sec there, let's see, it connects, there we go. So how it's written in the Torah scroll is quite different from how it's written in the Chumash. So VaYigash 293 in Eitz Chaim. So we see vowels and cantillation marks in the Chumash, which do not exist in the Torah scroll. So the Torah scroll is only the letters, the Hebrew letters themselves. And this is a way of writing Hebrew today. If you go in Israel, if you're in Israel, look at any traffic sign, any other road sign, you're in a supermarket, you read a newspaper, you buy a book, Hebrew is written without vowels. Okay, so the vowels are just extra to make it easier to read. It's not necessary to read. Sometimes the words are written a little bit different without vowels. You might put a yud in there or a vav in there to help with understanding if it's an O or an U or an E, something like that. But otherwise, vowels are not written in modern Hebrew. So, and they're also not written in the Torah scroll. They're not written in older manuscripts of Jewish texts like the Mishnah and the Talmud. No vowels in there either. So vowels are put in later once there's an accepted tradition of how each word is supposed to be vocalized. Okay. Also, how the words are arranged in the Torah scroll are a matter of tradition as well. And we would assume, since we're starting a new portion, VaYigash, page 293 in Eitz Chaim, that when there's a new portion, that there's a space. Somehow it's noted in the Torah scroll that we're starting a new portion. And I just want to share my screen to show you what I mean. So I found this online, Googling Torah portion. And I want to, if everybody can see this, here is last week's portion, VaYigash. And I just want to see if I can, I can't move this around. Okay, I hope people can see this, see that there's a space here. If you hide the gallery, the pictures of the people who are attending the class, you can see then better what I'm talking about. In the Torah scroll, this is last week's portion, VaYigash. That's the word VaYigash. There are no vowels here, but Vav, Yud, Gimel, Shin, and there's a space from the end of the previous portion to the beginning of the portion VaYigash. However, this week's portion, Vayechi, starts this way, just as a new sentence, as opposed to a new line or a space on the line. Okay, so this is Vayechi, Vav Yud Chet Yud Vayechi. This is the way the portion is written in the Torah scroll itself. The only portion of all the portions in the Torah that begin this way, as opposed to the way VaYigash and all the other portions begin with some kind of space or at the top of the line. So it's with that I wanted to begin today to to note why. Why is it that Vayechi starts that way? Okay, and so our commentary in our Chumash does not talk about this, does not mention how Vayechi is written in the Torah scroll. So by just following along with the Chumash, we'd have no idea what it looks like. Those of us who are Torah readers on a regular basis know that it's a little bit hard to find Vayechi in the Torah scroll. You'd have to look to a little bit later in the Torah portion and then work your way back to be able to see where the word Vayechi is. So it's hard to find. So why is it? So Rashi, there's a comment from Rashi about this. So the way, if let me just show you that picture again. Here we go. The way the portion VaYigash begins last week is known as open. So there's an open space here, patuach. The way Vayechi begins is closed or satum. Okay, there's no space there. It's closed. Okay, and so Rashi comments on that, on satum. So why does Vayechi begin closed or sealed in that way? So he has two suggestions for us. So so suggestion number one is with the idea of this closing there, because Jacob died, right? The portion is about the death of Jacob, or the impending death of Jacob. So because Jacob died, the eyes and hearts of Israel closed from the distress of slavery. So in other words, the portion begins closed as a foreshadowing of what Jacob's death is going to mean for his children and then the future descendants who become the people of Israel. They are enslaved, their hearts and eyes are closed through suffering, and so the portion then is written this way to give that prophetic lesson. And the other idea that Rashi has, also from the sense of being closed, is that Jacob, so he's about to bless first Joseph's children, we'll get there, and then he blesses Joseph and his brothers as well. So the idea that Rashi shares, both of these ideas are not his own. He often shares ideas anonymously, meaning they're from the Midrash, the prior rabbinic thoughts about this. So his second idea that he shares is that Jacob wanted to reveal the end of days to his children, but the end of days, that vision was closed up to him. So the idea here is that for the rabbis, the patriarchs, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, were prophets. They were blessed by having the relationship with God that they did to have certain powers that an average person doesn't have. And that Jacob, the rabbis are saying, had the power of prophecy and wanted to use that prophecy to reveal what would happen in the future to his descendants. And God prevented Jacob from doing that by closing off that prophecy. And that is symbolized by the way the portion begins, by having a closed off line. Okay, so just wanted to share with you those classical ideas, and just for us to understand how the portion Vayechi looks in the Torah scroll itself and why it looks different. So this is just an example of what the rabbis do with the evidence before them to create lessons that from that evidence. So when Vayechi starts in this unusual way, we get these ideas about the future of the people. Okay, so let's look at the beginning of the portion. So we're on 293 in the Eitz Chaim. It's Genesis 47, beginning with verse 28. Vayechi Yaakov be'eretz Mitzrayim Shiva Esrei Shana. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. Vayehi Yemei Yaakov Shnei Chayav. And the days of the years of Jacob's life were Sheva Shanim, 7 years, Va'arba'im U'me'at Shana, and 140 years. 7 years and 140 years. Okay, so it's not the way that we would say it in modern Hebrew. You put it all together, Me'ah Va'arba'im Shana. That's how you would say it in modern Hebrew. So in Torah Hebrew, it's divided up a little bit. If you remember, Chaye Sarah, the portion Chaye Sarah in which Sarah dies. So again, for the Torah, the death of the figure is introduced by he lived or she lived, as opposed to he or she died. So you have the word life instead of the word death to talk about the death of Jacob and to talk about the death of Sarah. So for Sarah, we were told that she lived 7 years and 20 years and 100 years. Sheva Shanim Ve'esrim Shana U'me'at Shana. So it's divided that way, 7, 20, 100, 127 years old when she died. Jacob, it's 7 years and then 140. So it's not divided into 7, 40, and 100, but 7 and 140. So he's 147 years old. What we make of that, from Jacob's death, 147, there is a Bible scholar known as Kasuto, who makes a lot of the numbers that we find in the Torah, specifically with the age at which someone dies. So Jacob was 147, Isaac, I don't remember how old he was, Abraham, I don't remember how old he was, but the point is their years can be divided up. Their age can be divided up as a multiple of 7. So just trust me on it. I don't know how it figures with 147, but it works out. I have it written down somewhere in a file somewhere about Jacob, Isaac, and Abraham's ages. So there's something to do with the number 7 there. It's not as simply that the number 7 exists in the number 147, but it's a multiple of 7. Okay, I'll leave it to the mathematicians to be able to figure that out. So he's 147 when he dies, but he's not dead yet. Now the rest of this portion is about the circumstances surrounding his death, what he's doing before he dies. Vayikrevu Yemei Yisrael Lamut. The day of his death is drawing near. Vayikra Livno LeYosef, and he called for his son Joseph. Vayomer Lo, and he said to him, Imna matzati chen be'enecha, if I have found favor in your eyes, simna yadcha tachat yerechi, put your hand under my thigh. Abraham does this with his servant Eliezer, to have Eliezer swear that he'll find an appropriate wife for Isaac. So putting your hand under the person's thigh is a way of taking an oath. You put your hand under my thigh, va'asita imadi chesed ve'emet, and do with me compassionately and truthfully. Or it says in the English here, steadfast loyalty. So I like to translate literally, just to highlight what the Hebrew itself means. I want you, Jacob says to Joseph, to swear to me to deal with me compassionately and truthfully. Chesed ve'emet, and how so? Al na tikbereni b'mitzrayim. Please don't bury me in Egypt. Okay, I just want to pause about the chesed ve'emet because there are a number of synagogues in olden times, not modern synagogues, but I'd say synagogues that are at least 100 years old. A lot of them are called chesed ve'emet. Also, societies dealing with the dead, like a funeral, Chevra Kadisha, or other groups like that prepare for funerals, are also called chesed ve'emet. Because of this idea here, this is the first time in the Torah, that here Jacob is on his deathbed and he uses this phrase, chesed ve'emet. So since then, anything dealing with Jewish death is called chesed ve'emet, right? So we're dealing with the dead compassionately and truthfully. So we're doing the right thing by the person who is dying or has died. Yes, Lori?
Yeah, could you say something about the swearing? Because I always thought that swearing in Judaism doesn't go together.
Yes. So let me just say this last thing about chesed ve'emet, that it's just from here on, there are other examples of this phrasing, chesed ve'emet, and that the idea is that the ultimate kindness that one can perform is taking care of the dead, because as human beings, sometimes we do things that our motivation to do them is in order to get a thank you, that we want to be acknowledged for the good that we do. And when we take care of the dead, there is no acknowledgement of that. So it is the highest form of mitzvah that you can perform. That is purely motivation for the mitzvah's sake, as opposed to for gratitude's sake. And so that's why chesed ve'emet, true act of compassion, is associated with death, because there is no gratitude that we receive for it. Okay, so the swearing in Judaism. So in the Daf Yomi process of learning a page of Talmud a day, we're in the tractate right now. Page 71 was today's page of the tractate Nidarim, which means vows. So, and there is another tractate called Shavuot, dealing with oaths. So yes, vows and oaths are a Jewish thing. Some would argue that the holiest service of the year is the nighttime service of Yom Kippur, called Nidre, all vows. So vows are an important place historically, Jewishly. And it is, to me, while I'm reading the tractate Vows, Nidarim, it is bizarre to me the things that people might vow. We have an example in the Torah of a Nazirite vow. a minimum 30-day period in which one could abstain from grape products and from shaving one's hair, and for extra religious sensibilities. That I can kind of understand, taking on that kind of vow, but a vow like I vowed that I will not eat this food, this particular food from now on, or that person's particular food, or I won't walk into that person's house ever again. These are kind of vindictive kind of vows or ridiculous kind of vows that it's certainly one can take. All you have to do is use God's name in taking the vow, and the vow is takes effect. And then it's a matter of trying to get out of the vow, and whether rabbis have the authority based on how the vow is worded or the oath is worded to annul the vow. So oaths are a little bit different from vows. Oaths might be taken in a court of law about evidence that's submitted, or a crime that was witnessed. So witnesses can take an oath that they saw so and so do this, and or do this or that, or take an oath that they are the ones who wrote their name on this document, things like that. So oaths and vows are an ancient part of Jewish tradition. Yes, Paul.
I just wanted to say, Jonah, that, I'm reading Daf Yomi also. One of the themes you read almost every day is the rabbis wanted to make it difficult for people to vow.
Yes.
And we're against the idea of creating or
Right.
entering into a vow.
Yes, that comes across loud and clear as well. Essentially, it's all about the fact that you're taking God's name in the vow, and that for the rabbis is most holy and sacred, and therefore should not be taken lightly. And the rabbis want to do all they can to prevent people from using God's name in that way. Okay, so I want to go on in the Torah portion to look at Jacob's blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh. And I want to look at this section, which is on page 296, the start of the second Aliyah. So whatever Chumash you're using, look for the second Aliyah. It's chapter 48, beginning with verse 10. So in Eitz Chaim, it's the top of 296. Whatever other Chumash, again, look for the second Aliyah. Look for chapter 48, verse 10. Okay. Ve'enei Yisrael kavdu mizoken. Literally, the eyes of Israel, right? His name is interchangeable here in this portion. The eyes of Israel grew heavy from old age. Lo yuchal lirot, he wasn't able to see. VaYigash otam elav, he brought them forward. So in context, Joseph brought his sons forward. Vayishak lahem, he kissed them. Vayechabek lahem, and he embraced them. So Jacob kisses and embraces his grandsons. Vayomer Yisrael el Yosef, Israel says to Joseph, Re'o fanecha lo filalti, v'hinei hera'oti Elohim gam et zarecha. Now, so the Hebrew here is a little bit obscure, so I'm going to use the English translation here. Israel said to Joseph, I never expected to see you again. Right. Okay. Re'o fanecha, seeing your face, lo filalti, I didn't expect it. Okay. So again, metaphorical seeing, because we were just told that Jacob can't physically see anymore. So seeing you, having you in my presence, I didn't expect this. I never expected to see you again, and now God is allowing me to see your grandchildren, you and your right? So this Joseph's brothers convinced Jacob that Joseph was attacked by a wild animal, right? They brought back his coat that Jacob had given him, drenched in blood. So Jacob assumed that Joseph was dead, never expected to see him again, and now not only does he see him, he sees his grandchildren too. Vayotze Yosef otam me'im birkav. Joseph brought them out from his knees. Vayishtachu le'apav arza. And they bowed down prostrate, yes, on the ground. So that's how, as a sign of respect for their grandfather, the grandsons Ephraim and Manasseh come out from Joseph's knees and lay prostrate in front of Jacob. Vayikach Yosef et shnehem. Joseph took the two of them, at Ephraim bimino, Ephraim in his right hand, mismol Yisrael, which would be on the left of Jacob, and ve'et Menashe bismolo, Menashe in his left hand, miyamin Yisrael, to Jacob's right hand, VaYigash elav, and he moved them forward. All right, so if you can picture that, let's say, as you're seeing me, I'm Jacob. This is my right hand. This is my left hand. Okay, the right hand is supposed to go on the older one's head. So Joseph, because Jacob can't see, situates them under the correct hands, age-wise. Okay, Menashe's the older, Ephraim's the younger. Older goes in the right hand, younger goes on the left hand. Okay. 14, Vayishlach Yisrael et Yamino, Vayashet al Rosh Ephraim, Vehu Hatzair, Ve'et Smolo al Rosh Menashe, Sikel et Yadav ki Menashe habachor. Israel sent out his right hand and put it on the head of Ephraim, the younger one. Okay, so this is what Jacob is doing. And his left hand on the head of Menashe. He crossed his hands because Menashe was the older one, but Jacob reversed his hands in this way, right? You see what I'm doing? So Jacob knows what he's doing, even though he can't see. He senses that the older one is under the right hand, but he wants to cross his hands intentionally. Vayevarech et Yosef vayomar. So he has his hands on the grandsons' heads, and now he's blessing Joseph, their father, his son. All right, so you think he's about to bless the grandchildren because he has his hands on their heads, but he's blessing Joseph by having his hands on his grandchildren's heads. So he blesses Joseph, saying, Ha-Elohim, asher hitalchu avotai lefanav Avraham v'Yitzchak. The God, or God, who my fathers walked before, parentheses, Abraham and Isaac. Okay, so the Hebrew is kind of written in a poetic way, saying, the God in which my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, Ha-Elohim ha-ro'eh oti, the God who shepherds me. So if you just hear the word ro'eh, it sounds like the word resh aleph hey, to see. But here, it's written resh ayin hey, shepherd. So the God who shepherds me, Me'odi ad hayom hazeh, from when I came into being. That's how I would translate it. It says here my birth. From when I came into being until this day. So the God who Abraham and Isaac, my fathers, walked with, is the God who shepherds me all my life till today. Verse 16, Hamalach hagoel oti mikol ra, the angel who redeems me or saves me from all harm, Yevarech et hane'arim, should bless the children or the lads, V'yikarei bahem shemi, and they should be called by my name. V'shem avotai, in the name of my fathers, Avraham v'Yitzchak, v'yidgu l'rov b'kerev haaretz, and may they be teeming multitudes, as it's translated here, upon the earth. Right, so he's blessing Joseph by blessing his grandchildren. So I think, first of all, this is a beautiful way to bless someone. You bless someone by means of their children. So that's a powerful thing to do. That's an idea about why we have children, in order for them to be our legacy and our blessing. And God willing, our children provide blessings for us in our life. And if that's the case, then that's how we become blessed. Right? All the riches in the world can't compensate for a terrible child, but a wonderful child can compensate for all the poverty. Right? So that's number one here. Number two here is that this blessing, many of us are not familiar with this, and I'm including myself in this. So I consider myself a pretty traditional Jew, but I don't recite the prayer for going to bed. So there is traditionally, if you look in a weekday prayer book, even our Sim Shalom, if you look in the table of contents, there is a prayer for what to recite when going to sleep. So I'm pulling off the older weekday Sim Shalom. If I look in the table of contents, prayer before sleep, page 168 in the weekday prayer book. 168. It's a 2-page prayer to recite before going to bed. So I humbly assert before you that I never recite this prayer. I do pray every day, but I don't pray this prayer every day. But we see that there is the first paragraph in regular size print is the opposite of the first paragraph we say in the morning service. So we have a prayer after the list of blessings in the preliminary service about who has allowed my eyes to open up. And so here, my eyes are about to close. So it's a nice frame for the day. So there's that. You have the Shema and the V'ahavta paragraph. You have the Hashkivenu paragraph, which is in the evening service, protection from the forces that are around us at night. A couple of lines from the next prayer of the evening service that are here as well. And then you have some verses also asking for protection as we go to sleep. And on page 169 in the weekday prayer book, right in the middle, these biblical verses recall God's blessings and protection. Hamalach hagoel oti mikol ra yevarech et hane'arim. This blessing here, Yikarei bahem shmi v'shem avotai, Avraham v'Yitzchak, v'yidgu l'rov b'kerev haaretz. Those two verses from the Torah are here in this prayer for going to sleep. And there's a pretty tune for this. You can Google, like I did yesterday, Hamalach Hagoel Oti. Write it any way you want in English. If you Google it, there'll be YouTube videos of tunes for this. Hamalach Hagoel Oti. I'm not going to sing it, but it's a beautiful tune. And then you're these verses here asking for protection. Okay, so it's beautiful, part of the daily routine to have a prayer before we go to bed, understanding that we're putting our life in God's hands. According to the rabbi, sleep is a form of death, and that way this prayer recognizes that in a way we're about to die and we're giving our body and soul to God. And then that's why we thank God for the restoration of our body and soul every morning, because we have recovered from that form of death. So that's how the rabbis see it. So there's beautiful prayer in which Joseph is being blessed by having his children blessed. And that the blessing is to bless these children in Abraham and Isaac's name, and that they should be prosperous, numerous in the land. Okay. So I wanted to talk about that. And and there's one last thing I want to do in the time that we have left. I want to look at the end of the portion. Okay, let's go to the very end of the portion. Page 310. So look for the Maftir Aliyah. It's chapter 50, beginning with verse 23. Here in the Eitz Chaim, it's on page 310, the top of the page, the last word of the line. Vayar Yosef leEphraim b'nei Shileshim gam b'nei Machir ben Menashe Yoldu al Birkei Yosef. Joseph saw 3 generations after Ephraim, and also the sons of Machir, who was the son of Menashe, were born on Joseph's knees. So he lived long enough to see several generations of descendants. Vayomer Yosef el Achav, Joseph said to his brothers, Anochi meit, I'm about to die. Ve'Elohim pakod yifkod etchem, and God should be a witness, or should take notice of you. Ve'elah etchem mina aretz azot, He'll bring you up out of this land. El haaretz asher nishba la'Abraham liYitzchak u'liYaakov, to the land that He swore to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So Joseph is reminding the brothers of this promise that God made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and this serves as a good transition to the next book of the Torah, the book of Exodus. Okay, so here's one transitional element that's happening right here at the end of Genesis. Vayashba Yosef et bnei Yisrael, Joseph has the sons of Israel swear, Lamor, saying, Pakod yifkod Elohim etchem, God, when God has taken notice of you, v'ha'alitem et atzmotai mizeh, you should take my bones from here. So when you leave Egypt, don't forget me. Take my bones out of Egypt. Excuse me. Vayamat. So that we have that chapter 13 of Exodus, right before the people are about to leave Egypt. Moses finds Joseph's grave and takes his body out, and there's a whole midrash about how Moses finds Joseph's grave, and the midrash cleverly uses the only girl that's listed in all of the 70 descendants of Jacob. So Dinah is listed, but she doesn't go with the family to the land of Israel. She was the one raped by Shechem. There's a whole other midrash about what happened to Dinah. Read Anita Diamant's The Red Tent to have that historical fiction based on midrash, about what happened to Dinah. But there's another girl listed. Asher had a daughter named Serach. Of course, they all had daughters. They must have all had daughters too, but that's the only daughter that the Torah lists. So because of that, there must have been something special about her, the rabbis say. So Serach lived from the time of Jacob, Joseph, and her father and uncles, all the way to the time of the Exodus. So she was blessed with some supernatural power, not immortality, but lengthier days than average, because she was the one who broke the news to Jacob that Joseph was still alive. She did it gently, the Midrash says. So because of that, she's blessed with a long life. So she's the one who told Moses where Joseph was buried. Okay, so we have that transition here, and the Torah points out in the book of Exodus how Moses finds Joseph's bones, and that's carried all the way to Israel. And traditionally, he's buried in the city of Shechem, and Joseph's tomb is often in the news as a flashpoint in the Palestinian territories, because of course there's a synagogue there and a yeshiva there in the midst of Palestinian territories. So it's anyway. Now 26, Vayamot Yosef ben Me'av Eser Shanim. Joseph died at 110 years old. Vayachantu Oto, they embalmed him. Vayisem ba'aron b'Mitzrayim, and they put him in a coffin in Egypt. Now, the embalming, clearly that goes against Jewish law, but there wasn't any Jewish law yet. The rabbis hadn't existed yet, but according to Jewish law, we don't embalm because we're supposed to bury as soon as possible. And placing in a coffin, an ark, a casket in Egypt also is a reminder, foreshadowing of Moses in the basket. The teva, the basket that Moses is put in, similar word to Aaron. It's a synonym for Aaron. And so there's that transitional element too. There's one final thing I want to say about this. If we look at the commentary on the bottom of page 310, it points out the last words of the book of Genesis, a coffin in Egypt, foreshadow the events of the opening chapter of Exodus, the enslavement of the Hebrews, the killing of the Hebrew babies, and the birth of Moses, who will be placed in a coffin-like basket in the Nile. Okay, so I just said that. Here's an interesting thing. The last words in each of the 5 books of the Torah, Mitzrayim, here, the last word of the book of Genesis is the word Mitzrayim. The last word of the book of Exodus is journeys, but let's find that, what the Hebrew word is, Pekudei. Mas-ehem is the last word, Mas-ehem, their journeys. The last word of Numbers is Sinai. These laws were given, Leviticus, the last word of the book, Leviticus, these laws are given at Mount Sinai, right? Egypt, journeys, Sinai, Jericho, that's where the people of Israel were at that point. At the end of their traveling through the desert, they are on the other side of the Jordan River from Jericho. And then the last word of the book of Deuteronomy is Israel. So what does it mean? Egypt, journeys, Sinai, Jericho, Israel are a virtual summary of the Torah's narrative about the people Israel from slavery to Sinai to the promised land. All right, say what you want about whether it's a coincidence that each of the last words of the Torah come up this way, Egypt, journeys, Sinai, Jericho, Israel, but perhaps the editor of the Torah did it intentionally, and it's something that we learn as well from this. Okay. Yes, Jules. Unmute yourself. Judy, unmute Jules. There you go.
I've been sitting here listening to everything and thinking I understand it, but you left me when you said, quote, "I don't say the evening prayers."
I don't even say the prayer for going to sleep.
Yeah, well, hold on. That's what you said,
The
But you
prayer for
never
going to
said-
sleep.
but you never said why.
Oh, why? I never got in the habit. Never got in the habit of doing it. I never saw my father do it or my parents do it. I never did it, and it's just not something that I adopted. I've adopted many things in becoming a rabbi and a traditional Jew. That's just not something I've adopted. I don't know why. I really don't know why. I don't wear tzitzit under my shirt. I wear a tallis in the morning when I daven. I don't wear the tzitzit under my shirt. There are a number of things that I don't do that Orthodox Jews would do. And I just don't know why. I just haven't gotten in the habit of doing it. And does that make me a terrible person? Depends who's judging me. But there's always more spiritually to aspire to. And perhaps because of this, I'll make an effort to adopt this as part of my evening ritual. But now let me say this: I did used to sing the Shema and the V'ahavta paragraph as part of the ritual of putting my kids to sleep. So, but they got to a certain age that they didn't want me or Lenore to sing to them anymore. So by the time they got into middle school, they were too old for mom and dad to sing to them before they went to sleep. So I will say, so I shouldn't have said never. I did say the Shema, sing the Shema V'ahavta with the kids as they were going to sleep. So there was maybe for about 12 years of my life, I sang I sang those songs with my kids, but since then I haven't done it. Lori.
Yeah, so I assume Joseph was eventually taken to Israel. His
That's what it
remains.
says.
Yeah,
That's what it says. And I think the book of Joshua gets into it as well, burying Joseph in Israel. I think.
okay. I was wondering if it's known where he's buried.
Well, do we know?
Yeah.
It says in the book of Joshua where he's buried.
Mm.
So because of that, that's where the tradition is of where his tomb is today. Is that really the tomb? Nobody has dug it up. We know the Torah tells us where Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, Rebecca, Jacob, and Leah are buried in the tomb in the city of Hebron.
Right.
Have we searched in the tomb? No, but it's understood because it's also a Muslim holy site,
Mhm.
because those figures are also holy in the Quran. So it's possible that that's where it is. And Rachel's tomb, just outside the city of Bethlehem, is still there today. But is that really the tomb? We don't know. Those are sites that are attributed
Right.
to them.
So
They are
is
ancient
Joseph
sites. They are ancient sites.
is Joseph thought to be buried with Abraham, Isaac?
No. He's in the city of Shechem or Nablus,
Okay.
so, which is in central. It gets into politics. Central Israel, Palestinian territories, or in Samaria.
Okay. Interesting.
Depends on how you want to refer to that
Mhm.
part of the land of Israel. Now, but the other patriarchs and matriarchs are buried in Hebron. Yeah. And
It's just so interesting to me how Joseph is so separated out,
Yeah.
given the major role that he played. And
yeah, well, he's the rabbis call him Yosef HaTzadik, Joseph the righteous one. So he's not quite on the level of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Because we don't, when we say the Amida 3 times a day, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzchak Elohei Yaakov.
right.
We don't say
Right.
Elohei Yosef.
Yeah.
Okay, so it's Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but Joseph is this transition character. And
Mhm.
so, yes, he had a relationship with God, but God didn't speak directly to Joseph. Joseph attributes his dream interpretive powers to God, and his management style of the 7 years of drought to God. But God does not speak to Joseph directly like God does to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yes, Barbara.
Wasn't Joseph more or less assimilated in the Egyptian culture by the time he saw his father again?
So there's that too, but the rabbis don't see that as a bad thing. That despite the Egyptianized way in which Joseph was behaving, an Egyptian wife, an Egyptian name, Egyptian dress, Egyptian language, he still acted Israelite. I wouldn't say Jewish, because technically there's no Jewish yet, but he maintained his Israelite identity within the assimilated persona that he was presenting. And that's a whole other feature of what it means to be Jewish today. What the rabbis throughout the Mishnah and the Talmud talk about how to be Jewish in a non-Jewish land, how to be Jewish in Roman Israel, how to be Jewish in Babylonia, or by extension in the diaspora. And the Talmud class, where we're dealing with the relationship with non-Jews, we're dealing with this very idea. The rabbis, it's always a give and take about, well, we have to be strict about this to maintain our identity, but we're willing to give up this in order to live in the outside society. How do you do that give and take? So Joseph wouldn't be denigrated for being assimilated. He actually, quite the reverse. He'd be extolled and praised for maintaining a belief in God despite all that.
Rabbi, I have another
Yes, Rita.
question.
Yeah.
Tehillim, can they be said after sundown, or is there a set time?
There's the prayer for going to sleep?
No. Tehillim,
Oh,
the
Tehillim.
psalm.
Tehillim can be said all day.
Oh, all day, okay.
If you go on a bus in Israel, you'll see a lot of from women take out the Tehillim and read that on the bus. So yeah, all day, every day. In fact, the ideal is to read all 150 over the course of the day, every single day. So that's, yeah, go ahead.
One other, because I have a relative and a friend having serious surgery tomorrow. So could you please, do you want me to send you the names, or you can
No, I
take them?
say it right now.
Okay, it's Miriam Bat Brushka.
Grushka.
Brushka. It's a
Brush.
Yiddish name.
Okay.
Naomi Bat Kayla.
Right, Caitlin. Okay, I will add those names to the list, and I hope
Thank you very
everything
much.
will go well.
Thank you.
All right.
One more.
Yeah, go ahead, Saul.
Are there any information either through Midrash or writings about how Joseph got along with his brothers after they came to Goshen?
Right. So the Torah alludes to there still being a distance, an emotional distance between Joseph and his brothers. We didn't get to it in this portion. When they go to bury their father, and after he's buried, the brothers say, now we have to be careful about how Joseph is going to deal with us. Maybe he's going to take revenge now that our father is dead. And so they say to Joseph, our father said that we all have to get along, something like that. So they made something up that the Torah doesn't record, that Jacob actually said, in order for them to feel protected from the supposed wrath or vengeance of Joseph. So the Torah hints at there being a distance between them. Nothing is recorded after Jacob dies. How many years is it until Joseph dies? You can do that somehow. You can figure out the math. How old was Joseph when Jacob died? And then how many more years is he alive until he's dead? However many years that is, we see nothing about any encounter between Joseph and his brothers And that itself could speak volumes about how they got along. And that could also be a foreshadowing about how the Jewish community gets along today. That, and certainly rabbis, the rabbis learned that lesson. How Joseph and his brothers got along and failed to get along is a metaphor for how all Jews get along today or fail to get along. So, all right. Have a good day, everybody. Take care.
You too. Welcome back, Saul.
Thank you. Thank you.